Hello, my name is Kay Johnston. I'm a teacher of 39 years experience in the United Kingdom, and I'm the founder of Enterprise Diamond School. Now, Enterprise Diamond School is a school that is totally dedicated to wraparound care, total wraparound care, for vulnerable children who would feel that need that kind of comfort and would not thrive in mainstream schools for a variety of reasons. The schools out there, mainstream, are too large, and they're not just failing children of African, Caribbean, or African descent, they're failing all the children at this stage, and there's enough data to support that, particularly of late or in the last year. And it's no secret that therapeutic care has to come first before academic success, and that is what Enterprise Diamond School set out to specialize in. Right, now, having worked in mainstream schools for over 30 years, it's been interesting stepping out of mainstream to see exactly why it hasn't worked. First of all, the mainstream schools are too large. There is absolutely no way that you can give the wraparound care to children, and for any one teacher in any one day, if you have, let's say, 5 periods a day, you're dealing with sometimes about 150 different children every hour. It is impossible to give wraparound care. Now, children come into school with a multitude of issues from home, from the streets, from peer pressure, etc. And they're not being addressed in school because teachers simply don't have the time. Schools are regimented by bells, pips, subject time limitations, and I thought that one of the reasons for Enterprise Diamond was to eliminate all of that, because life is not about putting things in little pockets during the day. So that is why they're failing. So the teachers don't have them. Everything is too results driven. To get on the league tables, that's all that matters. And you have a number of children whose needs, their mental health, are being sidelined because of just to get the right results. So that's one reason why they fail. Two, the curriculum in this country is Eurocentric. It doesn't address the fact that Britain as a multicultural country needs to be embracing everyone's cultures. The Black History Month is a token gesture. Every year, schools roll out the same American heroes that after a while becomes meaningless. We have got, in this country, we have got our own unsung heroes. We have got people in the community who are doing great things who are never talked about. So they become unknown, unseen, unrecognized. And as far as the majority of children, Black children up and down this country, they haven't a clue that these people exist. We look at some of the Black history cards, they're all American, and that's fine. But where's our version? So we have a lot of people who will do fantastic things, they will live and die in this country, and nobody will know anything at all about it. So that's one of the reasons why children are failing. Number two, for those children who have had parents who have gone through this education system here in the UK, they find a lot of the parents have had negative experiences of school themselves. So they are unable to pump the enthusiasm into their children because they're very fearful. And the only time parents are called into schools is if something goes wrong. You pick up the phone to ring a parent and it's like, what has he done now? What's she done now? They expect bad news all the time. So, because school doesn't have a positive image. So by embracing, the various different cultures and celebrating it, until that is done, schools are going to fail. Now we have, for example, the GCSEs in this country is the be-all and end-all of the road to employment. But there isn't the scope on the national curriculum to celebrate or to promote literature written by Black writers. So for those children who are being taken through, let's say, for English language and English literature, which is one of my subject areas, they will go through that course because it's very prescriptive, not knowing that there are fantastic writers out there whose work they can study. And they would go through the entire school and never ever know it. So these famous and fantastic writers out there are just being sidelined in favor of the national curriculum. Now, when I started, I was already teaching when the national curriculum came, its inception. And very little has changed, if any, in over 30 years. So it's the same thing that's rolled out year after year, almost at the same time every year, the same thing is rolled out. So not just for the children, the teachers lose the enthusiasm when you've been doing the same thing for 15 years running. You lose that enthusiasm. It's difficult to sometimes pump it into children who might be doing it for the first time. But for the teachers, it's the same old resources, tired and, over and over again. So for our children, the black children in this country, they just switch off because they don't see anything. They look at the books and they don't see images of themselves or images that look like themselves in all the books. We look at the heroes and they're all white. I had a bit of a shock with my own children because since I started my own school, I went out and I bought a lot of resources and a lot of books with, starting from books for young infants with a lot of black faces. Now, when my children were growing up, they read all the traditional fairy tales, etc. And I only found out recently from my daughters that when they were growing up, they thought that in order to look beautiful, they had to be white. And I was completely and utterly shocked. And, so for me, I'm hoping that when I have my grandchildren, I have it start that, that they see themselves as different. And, my children are not an isolated case. This is happening all around. There's no images of themselves, the positive images of themselves that are not caricatures that they can relate to. And if the curriculum doesn't provide for it, they might have a bit of Chinese New Year and they'd have this but where are the cultures coming in from Africa? From the motherland, there's nothing there. The things that are celebrated in the Caribbean, there's nothing there. There's no space on the curriculum for it. So the children would spend 75% of their lives in school between the ages of 5 and 16, and there's nothing there to represent them. They will go out onto the streets where they will find their own, and goodness knows what they're getting up to. And for those children who come from homes that are broken for one reason or another, where the single parent who's there might be out 2, 3 jobs to try and make ends meet, those children are even further lost. And that is why we have the problems that we're having now. So until the curriculum is addressed through our own schools, so that those children have a sense of identity from day one, and instead of French and Spanish, or as well as French and Spanish and German, we could learn Swahili. You can have, you have more teachers coming in who look like them, that they can have something to aspire to, and that is very, very important. So that not just, I want to be a teacher when I grow up, but I would like to be someone who, you have a doctor, you have various people, mentors within the community who are coming in, not just to give a motivational talk, but to talk about what they actually do and the journey, how they got there. That is what children find inspiring. At Enterprise Diamond School, we specialize in wraparound care. Now, the children who come into Enterprise Diamond School come from they live in deprived areas, so they come in with a number of issues. And it could be sometimes that they haven't had breakfast because there's nothing. I've had one child come in, had no breakfast because the milk was off. And if he'd gone to get milk, he would be late for school, so it's better to come into school. We have children, so we provide meals, we provide breakfast if the child is hungry, we provide lunch, we provide, provided clothes for those children, not just for the uniform. I provide their shoes. If their shoes are tight, money is tight at home, I buy their shoes. If it's cold outside and their coats are inadequate, we'll buy them a coat. And what's part of the wraparound care is just being a listening ear. Just sitting down with those children on a one-to-one and just talking through what bothers them and giving them that, hope when they leave, then they can see an end to it, or a means of how to get through the problems that some of them have to go through. And it isn't just this problems with peer pressure, it's just problems because some of them they don't really see a future for themselves in this country. And it's just talking those children through some of the things that they might have to encounter as they grow up and giving them some hope. And that is what wraparound care is all about, as well as the mentors and everything else, and reaching out to their parents, because the parents have got to be involved in what is going on, so that there's a continuation of methods, if you like. If something is working at home, well, then we do the continuation of good practice. If something is working well at home, well, then we can sit down and discuss it so that that can be used in school and vice versa. So when they're getting the same message at home and at school, it gives that sort of consistency, which is what they need. But the wraparound care is physical, it's emotional, and I think the emotional even more important than the physical. So that those children, they feel safe, they feel wanted, they feel loved even, because there's nothing wrong with giving a hug every now and then. Okay, let's just talk about it. And there's no stigma attached to it. There's no sexual connotations about giving a troubled child a hug and said, okay, let's sit down and talk about it. So that is what we do every day. Because you'll have some child who will come in perhaps late, or sometimes you just read the expression on their faces, they come in, and you know that something is wrong somewhere. And say, okay, let's talk about it. And we would leave the room, and the children who are working, they know what the situation is, so they would continue working, and I would go off with that one child, okay, let's talk about it. Because we can just see from the expression on their faces when they come in, or his or her face, that something has gone wrong. And we sit down and talk about it. And that's what wraparound care is. Now, in mainstream school, in a class of 30 or 35, little Johnny comes in late and he's got issues. He needs to, first of all, brace himself for a detention, either lunchtime, after school, or whatever, or the fact he'd better come in quietly and sit down because the teacher hasn't got the time to address that. And he knows that within the next 20 minutes, he's got to switch off from that subject mode into a different one. We don't have that at Enterprise Diamond. We complete one thing, and when it is understood, then we can move on to the next subject or whatever. We don't have a strict, oh, you must have 35 minutes for this, and 25 minutes for that, and 35 or 1 hour. It's when it's finished, it's a natural end, and then we move on to the next one, and we move on to the next one. And it's pretty much pupil-led. So that I have, for example, let's say within English, which is one of my subjects, though I teach a multitude of subjects. Let's say within English, we've been learning something specific. And I felt that at the end of that session, that it wasn't quite learned, but then we can address it the next day. I don't feel driven to, okay, I have a scheme of work and I must finish this by this particular date. No, because children learn they develop at different stages. And they must be allowed, while this is their childhood, to develop and progress naturally. When you try to rush a child into coming into something that everybody must be as one, that's where the failures come in. And if we repeat the mistakes of mainstream school, then we will get exactly the same results. Because common sense tells me that if you keep on doing the same thing, you will get the same result. So we have to do something that is completely different, and where the children feel safe, they feel protected, they feel wanted, they're there because they want to be there. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, what color or what culture you are, etc. What is more important is you have to have love for children, the know-how to put them in the right direction, and also to ensure that they get the best out of it. Now, one of the unique things about what I advocate is the mentoring scheme. And what we've done originally, we had recruited mentors of diverse careers, from gardeners to doctors to bankers, etc. Because not every child will go to university. Some children will go to work straight after school, some will go after college, some will go after university. But just to have each child mentored from the age of 11 by a mentor from the world of work in a field that they might be interested in. And so a year before that child was ready to start work, the mentors would be instrumental in securing the first work placement. It meant that every child who comes through our hands doesn't have to worry about where their first job would be. It means that they can also concentrate in their final year on the program of study, whatever it is, and to do the best, knowing that they didn't have to send out 100 applications and wonder how many they were going to receive. And working in partnership with industry, making sure that some of the teaching of vocational training meets industry standards, and just preparing those young people. But also, it's also what the true meaning of what a community school is like. Now, I go past some of the large schools out, mainstream schools, and you see this community school. But in reality, it's community school in that after hours, it's might be let to various members of the community to carry on activities. For me, community school means that from the time a child is enrolled in the school, it means that the parents and any older siblings, particularly those who are out of work, also have access to the same mentors. They can come on board. There's a separate enrichment program for parents and siblings out of work so that they can also benefit from the school. And when you have parents who are coming back into school and they're benefiting from the education that they should have had, it gives a completely different light, and you get a different kind of support from parents who, in the end, they help to drive their children's education forward because they're using themselves as an example. They don't want their children to be going back to school at 40 to do the things that could be done between the 13, 14, 15, 16. So you get a different kind of enthusiasm that comes from that model. And for me, that is what a community school is all about. In my curriculum at my school, Black history plays a very important function. It's an exciting journey, and it certainly has given the children a sense of pride in who they are and where they've come from, and what is possible, because when you look at the things that were achieved by ancient Africa, for example, and what is achievable now. We did an interesting comparison where we looked at ancient Africa in the 16th century, and we looked at ancient Britain in the 16th century. And the children were able to make their own comparisons as to who was civilized and who wasn't. Because the things that were achieved by the Africans as early as in the 1500s, Europe hadn't even caught up, and some of the things that they did, Europe still hasn't caught up. So it gives those children a sense of pride, and that is something that needs to be rolled out in all of the mainstream schools, but there are not a lot of people who are prepared to invest in it. They're not trained in it. It's not part of the teacher training. It certainly wasn't. I had to make a personal decision to include Black history, and for me it was a journey that I took alongside the children when I started, and you just can't get enough of it. It is absolutely fascinating. There's just more. The more you uncover, the more there is to uncover. And taking those children along with the journey has been one of the most pleasurable things that I've experienced in the last year. How do I know that our model works? When we were applying for the free school, the Diaspora High School, we had to do quite a lot of research. And we looked at the evidence of models that worked in various parts of Europe, the United States, etc., to see which was the best model for us and juxtapose that with our own experience. Now, Diaspora High School was intended to be an all-boys, all-through school, because I was concerned, first of all, at the lack of all-boys schools in the UK, not just all boys, but all through. You have them in the private sector, but in the mainstream there isn't, not to my knowledge anyway. I was concerned about the lack of communication between the primary and secondary. And so what was responsible for the dip was that there was no teacher collaboration between the primary and secondary, so we sought to put an end to that. Also, in the last application that we made for free school, there were actually two schools. We had the Diaspora Diamond, the Diaspora High School and the Diaspora Diamond, because parents who came to the public consultation meetings that we had actually expressed, well, we would like the same provision for girls. But in my experience, and also what we looked at, girls have very different ways of learning as compared to boys. And what I know from experience of teaching in not just all boys schools, but also in mixed schools, was the distraction that would stop education from being as effective as it could. So the diaspora diamond, for example, and that's where the diamond comes in, is the shape of the education. What we advocated was the mixed education in reception and then in the sixth form. So that was the shape of the diamond. And with the exception of music, drama, and art, where they would be mixed through. So that the boys and girls, you know, they could certainly collaborate with each other during their breaks, lunch break and whatever. But for the academic subjects, they would be separated, with the exception, as I said, with drama, art, and music, where, yes, everybody can play an instrument. We looked at evidence from Sweden and found that Sweden and Norway and Finland, where they have got a top quality education, and they have found that that model actually works. I know that the Department of Education was resistant to it, but were we given the chance to go ahead, that was exactly what we were going to advocate, because when we put it to the parents were 100% supportive of the diamond structure. So that their children were able to concentrate on their subjects, you know, without the distraction that you get, particularly from around the end of year 7 up to, well, right throughout the rest of school. But also you find that it also would give the boys and girls a chance to develop without feeling that they were being compromised by, you know, how they were being assessed by the opposite sex. So particularly with girls, I've seen in some schools where, and this is some of the chain academy schools, where they have just introduced girls into what used to be a boys' school. And I've gone into ridiculous situations where I had a class with 20 boys and 1 girl, and that was never going to work. Or 21 boys and 3 girls. And I looked at that and thought, this is where they need to have a stream with just girls only, in order for those girls to thrive, because the girls were suffering. There was constant, even in year 7, sexual harassment, a lot of posturing, and very little education going on. So for me, you know, I've remember putting that model out there, and the blogs, the online blogs were actually quite interesting, because some people were defending, oh no, this is never going to work. But we did a lot of research, and you know, when you are dealing with it yourselves and you know how to deal with it, for me, my vision is quite clear as to how it would work. Some people don't share that ideology, but for me, but as the school gets larger, certainly the diamond structure should kick in to give each child a chance to excel and do their best. You have very traditional subjects. You know, some people have a very traditional idea of what boys should be doing and what girls should be doing. I don't have that. If a girl wants to be a mechanic, she must be able to do so and have that training without boys saying, what are you doing? This is a boy's subject, this is a male subject. If a boy wants to do fashion, that's absolutely fine. A lot of the top designers are men. But you try to teach a boy fashion in a mixed school, and it's like, why are you doing that? That is what girls should do. Why you want to design dresses? That's what girls should be doing. So again, it's giving them the opportunity and exposing them to models in the world of work that they can see like themselves, that be like themselves, that would give them that opportunity, thinking, yes, this person has been, I can do it too. And there's nothing wrong with being a pilot as a girl, and you know, wanting to aspire to fly Virgin or have your own, you know, airline company or whatever. And that's not something, aviation is not something that is limited to men only. So it's these things that, this is one of the reasons why I advocate the diamond structure. Well, I'm proof that you don't need a huge lot of money to start a school. If we're thinking of our community, thinking of schools in terms of trying to match the large institutions out there to be funded by our own community, we'd never get started. And as far as I'm concerned, you start small and you build up, because the word gets out there. And I've actually got a waiting list of parents who would like their children to be, you know, benefit from what I have on offer. So it's starting small. But I mean, what is more important is pooling together and coming under one umbrella. And that for us in this country is the only way to sustainability. Because we've got a lot of talent in the community that is not being tapped into, and we've got, what I've found is that a lot of people are working in isolation. And working in isolation sets you up as a target. I found that to my, to my own ends, that it sets you up as a target from the establishment. They're really not interested in promoting any sort of black education-led institution, having made that abundantly clear. So unless we pull, and it has to be not just teachers, but the businesses, the mentors, all need to come together under one umbrella, because they will be the ones who will be providing the employment. And so it becomes a force to be reckoned with. So when everybody's come together and we have a logo that is central to that ministry, if you like, and you see it along the high street as you drive along, you'll have a barrister's company, and next to it is the logo for that ministry. You know that our people are covered, our children are covered. And you find that wherever you go, then it becomes a force to be reckoned with, and everybody knows where you're coming from. But it's also to open up opportunities, not just here in the UK, but in Africa and throughout the Caribbean. So that the children need to know that the world out there is theirs. They're not just confined to East London or to South London. The world is theirs to explore. I've actually got internships that are waiting for them in Ghana. In banking, in medicine, so that they can go out to Ghana and do an internship for up to 3 months, and from the age of 16. Between 2 weeks and 3 months, so there's that out there, and I'd like to take that in other parts of, open up those opportunities in other parts of Africa and the Caribbean, so that they know that their first work placement doesn't necessarily have to be up the West End or in the center of Lewisham. It could be in Trinidad or Tobago, somewhere. It could be in Georgetown in Guyana. It could be in the Rupununi. It could be anywhere. And then just open up that world for those children. That is also part of their education, being able to travel and seeing different cultures and seeing how people live and evaluate it against their own. So for me, that has got to be the way forward. We have got to come together. I didn't need a huge outlay. The biggest outlay that I did to starting up my school was actually the rent. That was $25,000 a year, which for me was absolutely mind-blowing, because it came out of my own savings. But having said that, we don't really need, if we've got somebody who we can build our own building and we can buy our own land, etc., but that is going to be time consuming. You can start in a small space. Because we have all got the same interest. We want to see our children achieve and become something better than what we've even done. It's to build on what we can give them and take it even further. So start small and build up from there, because the word does get out, and then you'll find more and more people. And if we come together and we've got some parents, let's say for example, like this one, dad is a builder, and you can put it, fine, let's get a piece of land and we build our own. For anyone out there who is interested in the advancement of our children, because I won't last forever. That's not my, there's a whole world out there that I need to explore myself. But I would like to see Enterprise Diamond carry on for generations to come. And so if there's anyone out there who's got the space, even start with 5 children, please get in touch, and I will come out and help to set it up, so that our children, who are more and more of the children who are being kicked out of schools for spurious reasons, have got somewhere where they feel safe and where there's hope, and they can carry on with their lives and achieve just as well or even better than those in the mainstream. So any of you out there who've got the space, the willingness, and it takes a lot of patience, please get in touch. I look forward to hearing from you.